Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Making Waves with me, Tom Prather. Today we have world famous tattoo artist Frankie Orange on the podcast. I've wanted to interview Frankie for the longest time, and I kept hearing that he was the nicest guy in the world, and I'm happy to report back to you that in fact he is. We had a blast in this episode where we talked about traveling the world with the likes of NSYNC, Metallica, and the Rolling Stones as not only a tattoo artist, but how Frankie wore many hats as a tour crew member, all the while living a clean, straight-edge life. We discuss how tattooing Justin Timberlake made him famous overnight and what medical condition forced Frankie to retire from tattooing. That led to Frankie owning Orange Tattoo Company in Annapolis, Maryland. But most importantly, we talked about how being a dad is the most important job he's ever had. I want to thank our sponsors for this episode, Jesse Itzler's BYLR 30 Days of Excellence and iconic clothing brand Britches Great Outdoors. Britches is a world-famous clothing brand that changed the face of fashion as we know it. They're the company that brought the rugby to America and the creators of the iconic Warthog logo. I've been wearing Britches since I was a little kid, and they're back after a 20-year hiatus better than ever. I like to say that Britches is prep with a punk rock attitude mixed with a little bit of surfer. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive 10% off your order at warthog.vip. Just use code WAVES, W-A-V-E-S, at checkout. If you've spent any time on Instagram, or a bookstore for that matter, you know Jesse Itzler as famous entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of books like Living with the Seal. But Jesse is also founder of BYLR, Build Your Life Resume. 30 Days of Excellence is a BYLR program that offers live weekly life coaching with some of the world's best experts in their field, like legendary Wim Hof, best-selling author and brain coach Jim Quick, and neurosurgeon and medical expert Sanjay Gupta. It's hosted by Jesse and former Navy SEAL and endurance athlete Chad Wright, and retired NFL player and celebrity trainer Mark Brown. I've been involved with BYLR since 2018, and I'm actually on these calls every Wednesday, and they're amazing. When you sign up for 30 Days of Excellence, you get 4 live calls a month, access to Jesse's Build Your Life Resume course, which is normally a $399 value, 1 challenge theme a month, a 30-day roadmap for successful habits, and unlimited access to past calls. It costs only $60 a month for all that, but if you're a Making Waves listener, you'll get 50% off your first month to give it a try. Just go to BYLR, click on 30 Days of Excellence, and use the code WAVES, W-A-V-E-S, at checkout. So in the words of my 9-year-old son, let's get on with it. Here's my conversation with Frankie Orange. Frankie.
Yeah, man.
Been wanting you on here for a long time. Fellow Maryland boy. I'll tell you later how I learned about you, which is not what you would expect. But I'm like, why am I not friends with Frankie? So, all right, we're going to start this off with a rapid fire questions. Everybody gets the same questions. As you know, you probably heard it. I think I'm going to go 100% on you. I think I know. So here we go. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Rolling Stones or Beatles?
This one's gonna fool you. I'm gonna choose the Beatles.
See that's where I had you wrong.
I can tell you why later.
All right, tell me why now.
Well. So I worked for the Stones.
Yeah.
And on the 40 Licks tour, and I honestly, out of my 20-year span, it's the one I liked the least, and I loved my job on all the tours, no matter what the genres were. But I hate to say it, but for me personally, Mick Jagger was a complete letdown. The other guys, the best. It's just him.
Well, like what? Like prima donna kind of stuff?
Yeah, look, I get it. Like when you hold these jobs with these people, they're not there to be your friend. They don't want your cell phone number. and I don't want theirs. I don't want to be their friend most of the time either. You know, like
Yeah.
I get the professionalism, but he's one of those guys where like when he's coming down the hall, you're supposed to try to and avoid that at that time, or if he is coming through, to not make eye contact. And
You got the no eye contact speech.
yeah, so of course I made eye contact. I've never been fired from a job in my life, and I was like, how amazing would it be to get fired for making eye contact with Mick Jagger, right? But you know, look, again, like I get they don't want to be obligated. They do give you a paycheck. They don't owe you anything. But the way I see it is I'm also away from my family. I'm here to do my job. I don't care if you say hi to me or not. So the fact that you need to put these staples in place, I mean,
So I want to get into this later in deep dive because you said something interesting that I want to follow up on. But real quickly, before we get back to the questions, do you think that was his edict, or do you think that was the manager's just
definitely him, because
really?
the other guys, I'm telling you, like someone like Keith Richards, if he passed you in the hallway, he would say, "Hey Tom, you know, before I'm going to stage, can I get you a drink?" That's Keith Richards.
Oh, that
You
sounds
know,
awesome.
Charlie, Ronnie, like they were very friendly, and again, I don't want to cross that line that they should need to be your friends. My point being is that, look, when you're working, 20-hour days, someone, being nice to you and kind to you, just a simple wink goes a long way for some people, especially for maybe someone like, me. I work with the artists pretty often, but what about the lighting guy?
Hmm.
No one knows who he is. If you came by and you just cracked a smile at him, you made that guy's tour. You-
Well,
you-
it's that, but it's like a movie set, and you're with the same people
yeah,
very closely.
yeah,
You're living with them
yeah,
for months and months at a time. You eat together with catering. You do everything together. So more times than not, movie sets, TV commercial sets, more so movie sets because it's a longer process.
yeah,
Everyone becomes family.
yeah,
And you have those Mick Jaggers of the world
yeah.
that don't want to be a part of that. But then you have I would say the majority of the people that I've worked with were just cool. And again, you may not have their phone number. You may, I don't know, but we'll get
Yeah.
into that later. I have an interesting story about that,
Yeah.
but
So for me, it's the Beatles.
okay.
Even though I do love them
Only because of that.
only
Take attitude aside, music wise, who would you pick?
music wise, I would have probably picked the Stones, but I will tell you what I call the drug years of the Beatles, like the long hair, like beard Beatles. I
Yeah.
love that stuff.
Okay.
I do love it. So Mick scarred the Stones for
They
me.
tell you not to meet your heroes. They tell you that.
Yeah.
You had no choice.
No.
All right, Coke or Pepsi?
Pepsi.
So you had me wrong on that too.
If you look up anything on me, all the suicidal tendency stuff, it's
Yeah, I guess so. I completely overlooked that. Beach or mountains?
beach.
PC or Mac?
Mac.
East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast.
Kramer or Costanza?
I would go Kramer.
Superman or Batman?
Superman.
And then I think I know this one: Kardashians or Osbournes?
Osborne's.
You saw that post I had maybe this morning on
Yeah.
Put my favorite Ozzy song on
Yeah.
there too. All right, so listen, my friend, you are a legendary tattoo artist, tour manager, businessman. I think most importantly, father. We'll talk about that
Yeah,
later.
that's my prized possession. I love being a dad.
Well, okay, so I was going to save this for later. I found out about you because of Six.
Oh.
So my daughter and I were sitting there one day. I think it was, I want to say Hulu, maybe Hulu, and we started watching The Kicks.
Amazon.
So Yeah, Amazon. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. And we were sitting there. We did a whole like marathon of it.
Yeah.
And she just was enamored with your daughter. And then, as kids do, she started pulling her up on Instagram. And she's like, "Hey, look, they're from an app." All this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Who's that guy that's always in that picture?" And then I found out it was you. And then I started looking, going, "Oh man, he's done this and this and this and this." So thanks to Six, thank her that we're here together today.
Yeah.
But so we'll talk about fatherhood later, but tell me about your early years. You grew up in Annapolis?
Yeah, I grew up in Annapolis, like super young parents. My parents just 2 weeks ago hit their 50th year anniversary.
Wow.
They had me at 16 and 17, and they've never even had another boyfriend or girlfriend. Like they come from big families, like 8 brothers and sisters, 7 brothers and sisters. So in that time when you have a kid that young, my grandparents were like, "You guys better get jobs. We have enough kids to take care of." And as I think back on like how hard that was for them, but the flip side is I'm so lucky because as I was growing, they were growing with me. So they really had like a great understanding of my life, just to give you like a couple examples, like my mom used to ride BMX bikes with me and, throw footballs with me. And like when I was 12, I can still remember this. I was listening to 98 Rock in my bedroom. And let me back up a step. I had caught the Looks That Kill video on MTV. And,
What do you mean?
Being from Annapolis, it's very preppy, very sailboaty. I love it. I love Annapolis. This is no shot at it. But it's a proper kind of preppy town. So when I saw that Motley Crue Looks That Kill video, I was like, what planet are these guys from? Like, I never had saw anybody like that,
What did you listen to prior to that?
Prior to that, it was what was on the radio. So, my everything from, like I said, what would be on 98 Rock. So typical like AC/DC, things like that. At that point, even the glam metal or glam rock, I should say, hadn't made it to radio. You were not hearing any Metallica or anything even at that point because those bands were only 1 to 2 years old at that time, Yeah. And so,
do you listen to DC 101 at all?
I did a little, but I favored 93 Underground and 98 Rock, to be honest.
Okay. They were more like rock stations.
Yeah. Pat Benatar, like stuff like that. And I was in my room and I heard that Ozzy Osbourne was coming to the Capitol Center, and the opening act was Motley Crue. So I go downstairs and I tell my mom, I'm like, "Look, we have got to get tickets to this concert." Well, my mom is a massive Ozzy Osbourne fan. So that was my shoe in, right? She didn't care about Motley Crue. It was the fact that you want to go see Ozzy, like. So we go to the Hex in the Annapolis Mall where the Ticketmaster was.
Oh my gosh! Did you camp out?
No. But I got to see my first concert. I got to see Motley Crue and Shout the Devil opening for Ozzy. And then it was just off to the races because I was like, my mom loves to go to concerts with me. So we saw Metallica on Master of Puppets with Cliff Burton opening for Ozzy. We saw Twisted Sister. We saw Motorhead. We saw, I mean, it didn't matter. We just went, me and my mom, my dad, he understood me, but he wasn't interested. My mom was let's do it. Right. So immediately, of course I stopped cutting my hair. I was playing a lot of sports and stuff, but I was so influenced by MTV, to be honest.
Sure.
Like, to put that visual with with music was it.
See, you and we're a year apart, I
Yeah.
think. And we came up in listened to literally the same radio station, probably went to the same concerts. I miss those times. Like going to Hex, to that little ticket booth that they had there. I went to the one in Temple Hills, like Marlow Heights. But, I was in Annapolis all the time. And like, I had the same experience with, it's funny. They thought I was really, really strange when I was a kid because I would lock myself in a room and listen to John Williams record players with the soundtrack of Star Wars. So that was my musical foundation. I taught myself how to play piano at 5, I think because of listening to all that, for a year straight.
Yeah.
But then I can see my evolution into harder and harder and harder, where I was listening to, my first concert was Bryan Adams at the Capitol Center.
Right on.
But then that turned into Survivor, which was a little bit more edgier. And then that was I remember writing Night Ranger on a book.
Awesome.
But the spring of 1986, I think I was 14, I heard Van Halen. And that just changed my life till this day. And I had that same experience where my older sister, she knew they wouldn't let me go to the 5150 tour in 86, but they just thought it was Satan's music. My mom did. And I lost a couple I got them back, the cassettes and stuff, but my sister took me to the Hex in Boston Commons Mall in Arlington, and we camped out in the snow. And that was my first taste of Metallica, because I didn't know what Metallica was. And they scared the crap out of me, these guys. I woke up and they're pouring bourbon on a bush right next to me. It's on fire. Felt great because it was snowing at the time. We literally camped out snowing. But do you remember those times? And you'd go to the music store and the smell of the cassette and all that.
It's the best. So Six, she has a great understanding of that. Of course, living with me, I have taken her, it's kind of so I've raised her alone since 10. So it's been a give and take. I'll go to the Taylor Swift shows, but you're going to go with me to see Corrosion of Conformity. And, she's seen Lamb of God, she's seen Slayer, and it's really great because she really gets it. She was so disappointed that high school wasn't the Breakfast Club. Because these are the feelings you're talking about, waiting in line for those tickets and then having to keep that ticket in your bedroom and not lose it for 2 months because you're looking forward to the show. It just gives so much more meaning and creates memories than the instant gratification.
Well, you earn it. So for me, the funniest memory that I have, and it's not a specific one, it's when you heard a song back then, it was only on the radio.
Yeah.
So you had to record it, and inevitably the DJ's talk up the first 15 seconds of the intro of the song became a part of the song. So even when 3 months later, after the single had been out and the album came out, psychologically, you still heard that DJ the first couple months that you listened to that album.
It became part of the track.
Little things it did. And I miss those days.
I feel the same with MTV. I really truly loved MTV. I remember coming home in the afternoon and they would have a 30-minute metal block, and Kerry King, when he still had long hair and had the nail bracelet, he would come out with his guitar and he would smash it against a gong and they would have, and it was that 30 minutes I was glued to, even though I'm not going to lie, I love music videos. It could be Madonna. It could be, it literally could be anything, Simple Minds, whatever. I just loved the storyline and the image and it, when I listened to the song, there was things I could picture with it and stuff that I could still, to this day, I could put on if VH1 Classic or someone's playing videos, I can put it on and I don't really care what comes on. It could be New Edition. It could be, I really enjoy music videos. And
I've been
it connects you.
I've been thinking that they need to bring MTV back like the way it was. Like even make it a YouTube channel. Like just dedicate some type of
They tried.
like
They
my
tried
kids
with
know what it is.
TRL. They actually
Yeah.
did try with TRL a couple years ago, and um, you know,
It's different.
it's the instant gratification. The fact that you can go to YouTube and you can and just watch any video and listen to any song whenever you
Yeah.
want. There's no reason to watch it. I mean, that's the
There
unfortunate.
isn't. I don't watch any of these award shows anymore. I tried to watch the Grammys a couple days ago and I was just sickened by the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And it's I don't know, it's sad, man. I have my daughter's turning 12. My son just turned 9, and not so much him. He's been to a handful of shows, but like she was my concert buddy,
Yeah,
which starting at like I took her to a so Mighty Mighty Bosstones.
awesome.
How what is your connection with those guys? I'm going to skip around because I noticed a while ago you had like sponsoring a racing team or something.
So I have a
It,
youth motocross team, and next year it will be 10 years old, and
okay.
basically, uh, long story short, I I love I love doing stuff for the kids. I love anytime if you want me to make a donation to something, it's going to be kid related. It's not going to be the police. It's not going to be the fire department. It's not going to if it will be a function for kids, that's where I like to do it. And I met this little kid, Clayton Stockstill at the time. He was like 6 years old, and he was a little motocross racer, and I got interested in him. And even though I'm into motorcycles, I've never got into motocross. And it was something that Six and I really enjoyed that neither of us took part in. Because
Hmm.
she was a soccer player and I had my and so it was nice for us to go enjoy something that didn't involve us. So I sponsored this kid, but I basically what I did is instead of just giving him money, I went and I got a bunch of sponsors. Everything that you would need to race, I got it. And I created a team and I basically made it where it was academically driven. So I'm not going to necessarily pay attention to your finishes. I'm I just want you to be, you know, well educated, a good sport, and really having a good time. Like embrace these values. I do not want it to be mistaken with the participation trophy. I don't agree with the
Hmm.
participation trophy. That's not what this is. It's just the thing with motocross is, for starters, it's so rare to ever become a pro. If you are going to become a pro, it's so hard on your body. You're never going to make it
Hmm.
past 30. So if I could instill these things in them, I felt that it would carry on to a better part of their life. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, yeah.
so if you do the right thing in school and you're a good person, and no matter what's going on at the track, you're realizing that I'm having a good time. I think that later on in life, when you go to get a college education or you go onto your career, you know that like what you put in is what you're going to get out. And that will
Yeah.
be recognized. And if you're just because you're winning the races, if you're a little ungrateful, jerk, no one wants that. No one wants that even in the professional world. Like I don't want to work with you. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it went so well that I started picking up other riders, even though, and I still am with Clayton today. Um, and
How old is he now?
he is 15 and a half. He's just about to get his learner's permit.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and that's basically what it's about. So I many years ago, 2002, I did the Warp Tour managing Good Charlotte, and the Ballstones were on the tour, and I always loved them. Well,
Hmm.
then Clayton, his dad, who's right around our age, he used to play in ska bands, so their family loves ska, and Clayton loves the Ballstones. Well, then, connecting. My friend Toby Morris, who sings for H2O,
Oh,
have you listened to his podcast? He's
no.
got a podcast called One Life, One Chance podcast.
Okay.
It is awesome. Really, really
I
awesome. You have
love
to
that
check it
band.
out.
No one knows that band, and I love that band.
They still play.
Yeah, I found out about that band. So I worked with the Ballstones for a number of
Oh,
years,
okay.
and around when they would come into
Yeah.
town, and I remember being on the side of the stage, kind of like this, just watching H2O, and I was just mesmerized by them. And then I look over to my left, and Dickie from the Ballstones is there, kind of doing the same thing. He's like, "What do you think of these guys?" And we just had to talk
Yeah.
about it. But they're great,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
great punk,
Yeah.
like just awesome.
So
Awesome.
Toby is obviously friends with them. And when Six
Yeah.
and I lived in LA, we would sometimes go down to the Kimmel show and hang in the green room, and Dickie works for Kimmel. And so then I got to know him a little bit as well. But he's on, the reason the Ballstones are on the dirt bike is all because Clayton it's his tribute to the Ballstones,
Okay.
which is really
Yeah.
cool to see a 15-year-old today know who that band is. But yeah, you should definitely check out Toby's podcast.
I will.
It's
Absolutely.
very like PMA. It does bands, it does actors, it does just good people, like just good, positive, just people in the community. It's not like you would think it would just be a big Warped Tour reunion. That's not it at all. He does,
Yeah.
anyone that I think he feels like would get and he does it all from his kitchen. They have to come in his kitchen and sit at the table and do it with him.
Oh, that's great.
It's really cool.
So unexpected too.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't think, H2O singer.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
They have one of my all-time favorite songs.
What's that?
And now I can't. It's the song. God, I can't remember that now. I'm having a brain fart now. It's the song that starts off with a girl talking.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna have to pull my phone out. It's one of my all-time.
Yeah.
Like the lyrics of that song
Yeah.
are just like more profound than you think. Like a ratty little punk band would write. It's amazing.
Toby is the king of PMA. And that One Life, One Chance, before it became his podcast, it's a nonprofit that he does, and he goes and he speaks at like high schools and things like that, because he is a straight edge guy. He is covered in tattoos. His son Max is one of Six's best friends. Max is 1 year younger, and he's just an awesome dad. Moon's an awesome mom, and I think it's his impression that he has on the kids is like, I can look like this and I can live this life, but I didn't fall to drugs, and I didn't fall to alcohol, and I didn't fall to like gang violence. And even though he speaks everywhere, he lives in LA now, and LA it's so accessible for all of that, so he's a great role model for the community.
How'd you stay out of that, or did you?
I've never even tasted a beer. I've never done anything ever in my life. My dad was one of those guys that like, he was a beer drinker, especially like if you're like mowing the grass, like, so I didn't have any bad experiences. I don't come from like a super religious family or anything. It was just I loved motorcycles, which I thought was a bad combination, and I just like being in control, like it just.
Yeah, but all those tours, and we'll get into all that, but like,
I've seen
that's
it all.
amazing.
This might be a little bit off topic, but something that I struggle with as a parent is even though I could be that parent that says, look, Six, I'm the parent. That's why. I'm the adult. Mm-hmm. That's why. Like you could power through that if you wanted to be that parent. But like I feel like that I like to justify things to her, like meaning that like I don't want to say to her, you shouldn't do it, but it's okay that I do it.
Mm.
I really, really try my best to lead by example. I realize we have a huge age difference, and we're at different points in our life where there's things that I may do that she shouldn't do, only because of the age difference. But how could I possibly tell you weed's bad for you if you know I'm smoking weed all day every day?
Yeah.
Like so I don't know, like that's always been a tough argument for me is parenting. How do you justify that in your kids?
It's hard because they see it. Kids see it. Kids see
Yeah.
hypocrisy.
I mean, she has a lot of faith in me, as far as, when I make a decision, even if it's not always the correct decision, she I think she sees why I made the decision, right? And I just can't, there's no way I could say to her, it's cool for me to do this, but you should never do this.
Yeah.
I just, I can't do
So,
that.
in my mind, we're doing this interview completely backwards, but maybe we're not because. So, I'll tell you this: I've just met you for the first time today, but you've been on my radar for the last couple of years. And one thing I'll say to you, dad to dad, is that I adore the relationship that it appears that you have with Six.
Yeah.
And it's just, people see it, and
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of dads should look into. I'm reading this book and have been. It's called Strong Fathers Raising Strong Daughters. And it's really all about you and I are the most important thing and the most important relationship to these daughters that we have, period.
For sure.
And that's another thing that's not really discussed. And we have so many, families that don't have dads, or they're there, but they don't connect, or they're not engaged in that way. And I just want to tell you, man to man, I appreciate you doing that. And I appreciate the relationship you have with your daughter. And quite honestly, it's been an inspiration to me watching from afar you guys
awesome.
interact with each other.
That really means a lot, because it is, all the music stuff and all that stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But really, she, being her dad that's really all that matters. It doesn't come with a check. It doesn't come, you know what I mean?
It not only doesn't come with a check, it asks a lot of money from you.
Dude, but it's truly the best. And there are some bad times. I mean, like, I will tell you, like, age 14 to 16.
Oh, don't. I don't want to hear.
I honestly, there was times where I was like, what was I thinking? Like, how did I think this was going to be? How did I think she would just be the one special one? And then, I think it's up to you as a parent to really try to understand not only them as a teen, but as becoming a woman, right? You're a male, right? So now you have to understand that some of her actions she can't even control.
Yeah.
Some of it she can, and the things that she can't, you would never tell her that that, because now she'll use that as a crutch.
So
right?
The interesting thing you just said, though, in the book that I'm reading, it specifically says in that age frame that you're talking about is that they're going to do things just to test you, just to see if you still stick around.
Definitely.
And that's the key. Just regardless of what it is, ride the boat and take it wherever it goes. Be the leader, but like never, ever, ever let them feel that you've given up, or that's the secret.
And it's been really awesome. It's what's cool is, like, and this feeling is, it doesn't matter how crappy of a day you have or what's going on in your life, they're stoked that you're you. Yeah. They're stoked that you're their dad. They're stoked that you're on their team. And I think that conquers everything, and I, even through my years of like touring and stuff like that, I take a lot of pride in my work. I always give it 110%. But at the end of the day, it's a job. And I know that when I get to go back home, I'm going to be her dad. And it doesn't matter to James Hetfield. It doesn't matter to Tim McGraw. It doesn't matter to the fans. And it doesn't matter how many tickets we sold. And it doesn't matter how many tractor trailers we have. Like, it's just a concert, you know? And
You know what's cool about that, though? They're the James Hetfields of the world that feel the same way we do.
yeah,
So even though they're on, doing their thing and it's a means to an end, they still would rather be back home, or the families with them out, on tour as well, or on set or something like that. And it's funny. It's like those of us that feel that way kind of gravitate towards each other because we know
yeah,
what's real,
yeah,
It's
yeah. And the fact that there's some parents that don't take advantage of that time, I don't really understand it. I mean, I don't connect with everything that crosses my path in my life, but
right.
this is one thing that it's part of you. Like, how could you not connect with this? How could this not be the most important thing?
I'm telling
How is
you,
this bothersome?
it's so, I'm sure. So I lost my dad 8 years ago. 8 years ago? Yeah. And I'm sure he hates when I bring this up, but I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah.
We didn't talk for 12 years. And when I was a kid, he was there, but he wasn't emotionally there. So it's like, I remember still what it felt like to go, hey, do you want to go throw the ball around? Well, after this TV show, or after this, or after this. And it was never, yeah, let's do it right now. And I don't recall him ever asking me, ever once, hey, how was your day? I don't recall that at all. But it was still, I mean, I don't want to paint he just wasn't emotionally connected. He blamed his lack of relationship with his dad. And I always just thought that was BS because we all have the choice to make decisions. And my mom has asked me over the years. So let me go back a little bit. We didn't talk for 12 years. My parents literally, he came home late one night. They got into a big fight. He left the next morning, moved out of the house, like that, literally like that. So I didn't talk to him for 12 years after that. I was pissed off. But we got back together and we learned a lot about each other for 10 years prior to his death. And it was awesome. And I got an appreciation and for why he did the way. I still don't understand it, but I understand why he felt that, different time. He didn't know how to, whatever. But my mom has asked me over the years, how you didn't have, quite honestly, the best of parents. I've let you down here and there, and your dad, you felt that you wanted him more in your life. How did you become this parent that you are now? And my answer was, well, I always knew those excuses were BS, and I knew what I wanted as a kid. So why wouldn't my kids want those same things? So if I just give those to them, and that's the one thing about parenthood that, what would I want in this situation? And I know they're individual people, but overall, kids just want the same thing. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want attention. So people make fun of me all the time. I play that game Fortnite with my kids like it's a religion because it's connecting me to the kids, And
yeah, exactly.
my son will come down and go, you want to play Pew Pew? And I'm like, let's do it. It's never unless I'm on a call like this, it's never all right, let's do it now. So it's probably to my fault. I'm like, whatever it is that you want to do, let's do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that though I'm with you, there's no excuse. You can make changes in your life and make choices. But do you think it also comes with just like the era and the generation that
I do.
they are?
It's hard for me to admit that because I don't know. I don't know why that's hard for me to admit. It took a long time for me to come to that. And I knew my grandfather. It was always my dad's dad was an alcoholic, but my grandfather wasn't. So he straightened out some point in the middle.
He wasn't getting that love and compassion either.
Dude, so my dad got lung cancer, brain cancer, and he fought for 16 months. And I remember one time, I'm like, hey, listen, you're like the gatekeeper of this stuff. We all kind of knew where it was going. And I'm like, I'm going to drive you downtown, and you tell me when to make lefts and rights, and just show me where you grew up, and tell me stories of
Yeah.
stuff. And we
Yeah.
were in Anacostia, and we drove by the fire station there, and just like as easy it would be for him to say, yeah, my favorite color's blue. He just looked at the fire station and goes, yeah, that's where they would drop me off. I'm like, what does that mean? He goes, oh, they would go out drinking and have the fire guys babysit me.
Look after me.
Yeah. And that's so foreign of a thought for us
Mhm.
nowadays. Like, what do you mean? Like, they don't do that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I heard it in his voice how much that hurt him.
Mhm.
And it stuck with him all those years. And I think that treatment and other things that he told me just paralyzed him when I came around. I was his
Mhm.
first kid, and
Mhm.
he just didn't know what to do,
And how to express it.
and how to express
Yeah.
it.
Because when you hear me talk about my parents, you hear me say my mom, my mom, my
Yep.
mom. My dad, again, he's still married to my mom. He's still in my life, but he was not a part of that stuff, But I feel like it's kind of the same thing. My grandfather. I'm a third. I used to stay at my grandparents' house all the time, and I remember how my grandfather was, and I see it, and of course at the time as a teenager, I didn't really like him for it because he's never seen me play football, he's never seen me play ice hockey. He was a construction worker during the day and a volunteer fireman for 35 years.
Wow.
But I'm an only child, and then when I had six, something got into him, and he one day, we were burning some stuff in the backyard, and
Yeah.
he's like, I know I missed everything with you, but I will not miss anything with her. Like it's the I've realized it, and she is you, and I can't. It's the only way I'm going to experience the youth,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And as much as like at the time I was so resentful, like gosh, I was probably the only kid that did not like firemen. Like honestly, like
You
every
attach
kid
that to
wants to
your
get on a fire truck, and I hated those guys. I had nothing good for them. Like totally different obviously now. But and then I don't know if you've read any of Nikki Sixx's stuff. But he talks about how much his grandmother raised him, and how much hate he had for his dad. And he recently wrote something about like now that I'm at this age and da 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 da, I'd never really looked at it through my dad's eyes. And even though I don't necessarily agree with everything, I wish I could have saw it from his side then.
Yeah, it would have changed a lot of things.
What he was going through and what he was feeling, and we won't ever realize that until we're older,
So I had a lot of resentment towards my dad. And in those 10 years that we patched things up, there were still times where I just scratched my head going, what? Like, I don't, like, I'll tell you a really quick story. I got food poisoning. They didn't know what it was. So I drove myself to the hospital. My wife and two kids were at the house, and I was supposed to see either my dad or my mom that day. So I texted both of them and said, "Hey, listen, I think they're both supposed to come over, and I can't. I'm in the hospital. Don't worry. They don't know what it is. It's probably nothing, but we have to move this thing." Da 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 da. That was it. My phone ended up dying. So I get out of the hospital. Come to find out, it was food poisoning. But I talked to him either that night or the next day. I remember this clear as day. And he's like, talking about, I got to get this new iPhone and damn thing's not working and da 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 da. I'm like, dude, did you get that text? He goes, yeah, you're in the hospital. Like, what do you? Really? That's it? And I was like, I gotta go, and I just hung up the phone. I'm like, what? I don't. Where's that? But I learned. It sounds so bad, and this isn't making excuses. It's just I gotta take what I got. Like that's what that's where his brain is. But I will say this: I sat across my dining room table from him one day, and we would just. I'm known for just asking really hard questions out of the blue. Like we could be a good dinner. I'm like, so why did you leave? Because I mean, I've had to sit with it all these years. Why am I making life comfortable for you? So we were sitting at the table one day, and very similar to your story, I looked at him and I said, I got a question for you. And he's like, what's that? And we were eating steak. And I said, are you looking at this as a second chance? He goes, what do you mean? I said, your relationship with your granddaughter, is this you trying to be the best dad you could be for me through her? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I missed a lot of time and I screwed it up. And by getting close to her in some weird way, I'm even getting closer to you. And I said, well, it's working. Like it makes my heart feel better, and it kind of closes the gap. And it says a lot that you would even do that now, because that's what I wanted. And it's fixing me that you're doing that with her.
It's so cool that, that, how do I say this? Like, I guess I don't totally know how to say it, but I think it's cool that they didn't just give up on it and just be like, went this long, you know what I mean? Like, why try now, right? And that's cool. And I know what it was, is that what you took from it, like what you took from who they were then to what they are now, and you chose to be who you are.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as much as we've all had those friends that have had everything, have had like the best home, family, financially set, and they turned out to be life failures. And what you took from how you grew up and your experiences to what kind of parent you have become and your values, it's sort of like it was meant to work out that way.
Yeah. Well, it was a decision, though. I made a decision. I did not want that family cycle to continue. I wanted to feel good about my last name. I didn't want to look back and go, oh, it happened again. I just was like, it's not happening again.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I love this conversation, because I have a ton of, I mean, we haven't even talked about your career and all that stuff, but this is the important stuff, I think. So it's
well, and like, you real quick, like when you said, well, people think, you smoke weed, like, dude, like between drugs, alcohol, and the Hells Angels, everyone assumes I'm a part of all that. And I was a glorified soccer dad, I just looked the part of all that craziness, but I was just a soccer dad and a stage dad, like the only great thing behind it was when we go into auditions and I sit in the room, everyone stays clear. Like those moms will not come anywhere near me. I don't have to talk about all that stupid crap and all that. They just prejudge, and I love it.
Yeah.
It saves me all the crazies and the fakes,
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so let's get into the career. Do I understand this correctly? You wanted to be a tattoo artist at 12?
Yeah, like I loved, again, such a weird thing because it wasn't big in my family, but I just really took to tattoos. I really loved them.
Do you remember the first tattoo you saw that you were like, oh, I want that?
Yeah. And I didn't get that tattoo, but I knew when I saw it, I was like, dude, I'm going to have something like that. Is Harley from the Cro-Mags has that big dragon on his chest. And I saw the Cro-Mags open for Motorhead. I didn't even have a driver's license. And when I saw that chest tattoo, I was like, I'm 100% like, I'm getting something like that. Like, I just thought he looked so cool.
Do you, by the way, a little detour, do you remember how loud that Motorhead concert was?
Loud.
They're loud.
Like I mean, ears ringing
Yeah.
to the next day, you know. That was like Filthy Phil on drums
Uh-huh.
still, and so good, you know. It was at Warner Theater in DC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the chairs were completely like torn out
Oh,
of the
yeah.
place, and um, yeah. So I just loved them. I expressed it to my mom. I loved them, and she said, as cool as she is, she said, if you get a tattoo even a day before you're 18, I will kill you. And I was like, okay, fair enough, you know. So on my 18th birthday, you know exactly where I was.
Where was
Um,
your first like where did you go to for your first tattoo?
so at the time, you know, there wasn't quite as many tattoo shops as there are now. And there was this one in Fort Meade that I knew of called Gemini. And I went in like the week before and I'm looking around the wall and there was their receptionist guy, you know,
Mm.
that helps out in the front. He was such a jerk. Like he, you know, at that time you just picked off the wall and they would give you a price, and if it was going on a special part of your body, there'd be an additional fee for that.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, I really like that Phoenix and I want to get it on my upper arm, but I want to get it up high enough that the tail feathers actually kind of crest over my shoulder a little bit. And he's like chuckling and like, I mean, if you can afford it, you know. And I was like, well, how much will it be? And he told me, and you know, just really kind of like made me feel like, well, I was a 17-year-old kid. Like, how are you, you know? So I came in on my birthday and I went right to him and I'm like, I'm getting that one right there today. You know, boom, you know, it's
Here's the
got
money.
cash in my pocket. And I couldn't wait to make him eat his words. And then literally the very next Friday, I was in
Oh
again.
my
And the
goodness.
very next Friday, I was in again. And I was you know, all through my high school years, I was pumping gas on the full serve island of an Exxon. And so between my paycheck and tips and stuff, like, you know, every payday, I would just go and my mom was like, you know, whatever, you know, you just didn't do it before you were 18. So
Yeah.
I don't have one of those stories of like, well, I was in my friend's basement or I got a fake ID, or I really truly waited till my 18th birthday. But within a year, I was already getting like really covered, you know.
Within a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking like, I mean, I wasn't buying beer, I wasn't buying cigarettes, you know. So I had the cash, you know.
Yeah.
And well, so that studio, after being in there, I mean, I was in there like almost every day of the week, even when I wasn't getting tattooed. I just loved it. I just loved being in there. I loved having conversation with the people that were coming
It
in.
was
I
your
loved the
barbershop.
designs.
It was your barbershop.
Yeah, totally. So the lady that owned the place, she said, well, look, you're here all the time. If you want, you can help customers and I'll just trade you your time for tattoos. And I'm like, done. Um, so I worked my day job. I ended up quitting the gas station. You'll love this, you being a guitar guy. And I got a job at Paul Reed Smith
That's
Guitars.
on my list to talk to you about.
Yeah. And
What
so
did you
when
do
I would
there?
get off the guitar factory, I would go to the tattoo shop. Well, then after doing that, you know, she was like, you know, always was interested in tattooing, but whenever you ask someone about an apprenticeship, they immediately they'll just chop your head off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not teaching you. And then they like treat you different too. Like they think you're only coming around because you want to learn, you know? So I never brought it up. And she said, hey, have you ever had an interest in learning how to tattoo? And I'm like, yes, I have. And I basically said to her what I said to you. I was like, I just was too afraid to ask, you know? And she's like, we've never met anyone more committed. I mean, you're here like every day. Like you want to be here more than we want to be here, you know?
Were you an
So,
artist at any point? Did you draw at that time? Did you show
I mean,
creative an
you know,
inclination?
like just like tattoo wise, I never was like like a painter or nothing more than what you would just take in
Yeah.
junior high, high
Okay.
school. So I started an apprenticeship. It was a very traditional apprenticeship where back then you were not allowed to be affiliated with any other shop. You couldn't even get tattooed by other people. It's not like today. Like it was very secretive.
Hmm.
Like what goes on here stays here.
Yeah.
Um, and that's that. Well, um, fast forwarding I did a 5-year apprenticeship. Now keep in
Wow.
mind, 5 years, about 40 hours a week with no pay. So I worked 40 hours at the guitar factory, another 40 hours at the tattoo shop for no pay. But I wanted to learn. And like I said, it's a very old school way of doing things. So a big part of tattoo apprenticeships isn't learning how to tattoo. It's really just testing your loyalty.
Hmm.
Because once I teach you this trade, you could easily become my competition.
Yeah.
So as far as learning the tattoo, no, it does not take 5 years to learn how to tattoo. It's just your loyalty. So about 2.5 years in, one of my good friends who was affiliated with another shop, we went and saw Biohazard, Sepultura, and Pantera at Merriweather. And my friend was one of those people, when he gets drinking, he is rowdy. And he was up on top of the crowd, in the
Yeah.
seated area. And when the security would try and pull him down, he was like kicking them. And well, they finally got a hold of him, and they took him off to the side, and they pile drived him into the embankment, and they severed his
Oh my
spine, and
gosh.
he instantly was a quadriplegic.
Wow.
Instantly. So he got put at shock trauma, was on life support. Um, I I was telling, obviously my people that were teaching me the tattoo, I was like, when I get off, I'm going to be going to the hospital. My friends there, and blah 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 blah. They were butthurt that I was communicating and friends with someone from another shop, and I'm like, you guys, like, this is way bigger than tattooing. Like, he may not live. I mean, he's like on life support right
Yeah.
now. This isn't about tattooing. Every day they kept riding me and riding me and riding me. And finally, one day I was like, you know what? I don't care about learning how to tattoo. Like, my friend's on his deathbed, and if you can't see past that, then you can, just find another apprentice. So I quit. And literally that day, as I'm walking into shock trauma, the tattoo shop he was affiliated with was called Little Vinny's in Westminster. And Vinny was coming out of his room, and he asked how it was and how my apprenticeship was going. And I said, ironically, I literally just quit because they have a problem with me coming here and seeing Brian. And he was so taken by it. He was like, you can just continue your apprenticeship at my shop then. That's ridiculous. And what was great about that is they were a bit more new school. So I've gotten a few years of the very old traditional, and now the new
Hmm.
school. I'm getting both sides. Or so otherwise I was going to give up on the whole tattoo thing.
Well,
Um, and then went off from there. I became a tattooer, and
well, how did you get noticed by
so
these
um,
bands and stuff?
okay, so around 97, 98, I switched to a shop in Georgetown that had just opened called Jinx Proof,
Hmm.
and was working there. That was great. And uh, I'm trying to think how it all came about. I had a friend that I tattooed on In Sync, that and at this point In Sync was just breaking through,
Hmm.
like becoming like massive. And like No Strings Attached was, they're playing stadiums. And he was like, he had reached out and he said, the guys in NSYNC want to be tattooed by you. They had saw what you did on me, and we're going to be playing RFK Stadium, would you come down and tattoo? And this is so funny. And I was like, yeah, sure. Not funny because it's in sync. It's just funny how just things happen. So when they came to RFK, I went down there, I took off work, and I met them all, hung out, like sat there all day and didn't do a single tattoo. So I was like, well, thanks for having me. If you guys want to catch up again, you know how to get a hold of me. They were so awesome, know. And so literally later that week, they called and were like, hey, we've sold out the Garden 5 nights in a row, and we're also filming an HBO special. Why don't you come spend the week in New York with us? And I was like, okay, I can make that happen. So I moved my schedule around, and I went to New York. They gave me a hotel and private car, and I had one of the dressing rooms in the Garden was my room. I was next to Pink, who was their opening act, right?
That's crazy.
I am there 5 days, and I never tattooed any of them.
So
because they're in New York, they're so busy.
Why did you go there? Did you? What capacity did you go there, like, to fulfill? Tattooing?
Yeah, just a tattoo, right? So while I was there, though, I tattooed Britney Spears. I tattooed Summer Altice, who was like Playmate of June that year.
What did you do on Britney?
I reworked that little fairy on her lower back.
Yeah.
It was already there. I tattooed a bunch of other people, but I never tattooed them. So at the end, I was like, you guys, like, thank you for an incredible week. Again, you know where to find me. And they were like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, well, I'll be doing what I was doing before I met you, just be back in DC. And they were like, well, just come to the next city. Well, long story short, I never came back home. Like, I stayed for the entire leg of the tour. And I ended up tattooing them, and one of them, which was the most, like, the one that really, really put things on the map, was not only did I tattoo Britney during that time, but I tattooed the cross on Justin Timberlake's arm.
That's you?
And that was a big deal. And what's funny is, like, when I was just about to tattoo him, he looks me in the face and he's like, this is going to change things for both of us. And I was like, shut up. Like, it may change things for you, but unless
Why
you walk
would that
around
change things for him? Like, make him more gritty or something?
Yeah, because he didn't have any, I mean, you got to think this is the early 2000s, and their skin was clean besides some stuff on their legs. And I'm like, if my name isn't on your arm, no one's going to have any idea who I am, know? And I'm glad you want me to do this tattoo, but don't blow this smoke up my butt. I don't give a crap. Well, oh my God. He was so right. Like, it went crazy. Like, the next couple days they filmed like a video, and he purposely wore like a wife beater in the video. But man, when I got back to Georgetown, the phone was going crazy. Like, all the college students were like wanting to get tattooed by the guy that tattoos Justin and Britney, and there's radio stations calling, and it. And then the next thing you know, Planet Hollywood contacted me, and they were like, we're doing a fundraiser. We're selling these T-shirts, and the money will go to these charities. And Justin's doing one, and Britney's doing one. And Justin said he'd like to do something with you and the cross for the shirt. So could we do that with you? And then he's a big golfer. And then there was a golf company that was like, we want to make this cross buckle for him to wear in this like special tournament. They had crosses on golf balls even. It was mind-blowing. It really, he was absolutely right. It changed everything.
And he looked out for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, so The leg was over. I was home a few weeks, and then I get a call, and basically it was Instinct's people saying like, "Hey, we wanted to know if you wanted to take an actual job on the tour, not tattooing." And I was like, you know, I don't I don't know that that's for me. Like they're not a band.
Yeah.
They're in sync, like they're as big as the Beatles right now in the millennium, and they were basically like, look, we don't really care what you think. Like you make them really happy, and when they're happy, everybody's happy. So it was going to be like taking care of their dressing rooms, like setting up their dressing rooms, and they had like a game room and a tanning bed and like, and I just remember it coming over me, and I'm like, you know what? Like I know how to tattoo. Like this is an opportunity I should take. At the time it I think my starting pay was like $800 a week. It was, for a band that size, that wasn't nothing, So I took a hit in pay, and they were like, "Look, on the day off, our crew all has per diem and cash. You can tattoo all you want, but on the work days, you're on Instinct's time." So I took it, and I did 2 albums with them. I did 2 touring cycles, and
The same job?
well, that's the thing. So at every leg, it seemed to get more and more and more responsibility. And
Yeah.
then I started thinking, and I'm like, man, this is as big as it gets. So when they're not in the building and my job's done, I'm going to go see what the carpenters are doing. Before you know it, I even got the accountant to let me sit in on settlements. I was just going to absorb everything I possibly could. So when they finally went on their hiatus in 2001, Good Charlotte, who's from Maryland, was just getting ready to put out the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, the Young and the Hopeless, and they were, and Benj and Joel. I have known them since they were like little kids on Razor scooters.
Really? How about?
Because they were always around Annapolis.
Oh, okay.
They're from Waldorf.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like, "Hey, would you be our tour manager?" And I was like, "Bench, like I've never done it before, but I have a lot of faith in what I just experienced. I can figure this out." Because they were just starting out in B market clubs. I'm like, I can figure this out. And he was like, "Great." Man, halfway through the year, that album got so big, we were headlining arenas the same year. We went from clubs to the United Center,
What kind of tour manager were you? Because I've dealt with tour managers, and they're not generally pleasant to deal with. And you're a nice guy. So did you flip a switch, or did you do things Frankie's way?
With Good Charlotte, I made a little bit of a mistake. Because it was such a learning time for me. I came from the A-list, as big as it gets. Every moving part does its part. And the artists were also very on point. And when I